Hey guys, it's Danny. Welcome to another episode of our Orchid Care series, destined for beginners. So far, we talked about repotting Phalaenopsis orchids, watering them, fertilizing them, what to do after the blooms fall, and today it's only fitting that we talk about where exactly we can put these orchids in our house so that they have a good life, but also we have a good time caring for them as well. As always, this video is sponsored by repotme.com, who offers you everything you could need to properly take care of your orchid, from potting medium, accessories, fertilizers, and even pest control. If you are into bonsais or African violets, they have something for you as well, so I will link you to their store down below in the description. You can visit them at any time. And with that said, let's start today's topic. One of the most important aspects we need to keep in mind when deciding where we should keep our beautiful Phalaenopsis is light quantity. Now, these orchids really don't require extreme bright light, certainly not direct sunshine. However, this does not mean that they will grow well in the dark. So when choosing a proper space, we need to make sure that the orchid receives some natural light, although indirectly, or at least artificial light. So places such as under the desk, under the table, or very far away from any source of light are simply not okay. You can absolutely place your Phalaenopsis next to the window, as long as you make sure that direct sunshine doesn't fall on the orchid's leaves, particularly at noon when the sun is the hottest. Windows which have an eastern exposure will deliver direct sunshine only in the morning hours, and that's just ideal. Northern exposures can work as well if you have a lot of light bouncing from the buildings outside. With southern and western exposures, you need to be very careful and try to filter the light by using sheer curtains or frosted window films. Phalaenopsis orchids are very prone to having sun damage on their leaves, so if you know that the sun does fall on the leaves of your Phalaenopsis, just touch the leaves, and if you feel they are hot, chances are they are in danger of getting damaged. But if the leaves remain cool to the touch, everything should be okay, even if the sun falls on the leaves. When it comes to artificial light, we don't have the same problem. Most of the times, artificial light will not overheat the leaves unless the actual bulb is very close to the leaves. So make sure that the orchid is at somewhat of a distance from the light source, but as much artificial light as you can provide will be greatly appreciated for the orchid. For this reason, Phalaenopsis orchids are actually pretty flexible. If you have a window ledge, you can definitely place them there, but you can also keep them on your desk, maybe in your office, if you can provide artificial light. You can provide this light even with a desk lamp. No matter the case though, make sure that the leaves never become hot. That's when they usually get damaged. Next important criteria is temperature. Phalaenopsis orchids actually prefer the same temperature that we prefer, not too cold, not too hot. So chances are that if you are comfortable in your home or in your office, they will be as well. However, extreme temperatures are really not healthy for Phalaenopsis orchids, so make sure that you choose a location which is not prone to having these very big swings of temperature. For example, don't put your orchid very close to a radiator. Even though in your home you might have adequate temperature, very close to the radiator, the temperature might be very high. High temperatures can lead to serious dehydration and overall, a very inadequate environment for Phalaenopsis. Also, in the summertime, you might use air conditioners or other means to cool your house. Make sure that the orchid is not in the direct path or in the flow of an air conditioning. Again, even if in the room you might have adequate temperatures, very close to the air conditioning unit or directly in its flow, the temperatures might actually be very low. These swings can affect buds and flowers, they can make them dry and fall prematurely, but also it's not very healthy for a growing Phalaenopsis orchid. Leaves overheating or becoming very cold can lead to damage. If you are using a fan which simply circulates the air, everything is okay. So from this point of view, air movement is absolutely fine for the Phalaenopsis orchid. The temperature is usually what affects it. A few things that I would like to mention here before we move on. Take into account that Phalaenopsis will usually in time start to lean. They usually lean towards the light source. If the light is coming from above, They won't lean as much, or they will take longer to start leaning. But if you have your orchid in front of the window, you can actually expect it to lean towards the window. That is perfectly normal. It is within this orchid's nature to lean towards the light. In nature, this orchid actually grows attached to trees. And a tree trunk is not horizontal, it is vertical. So this would be a much more natural position for a Phalaenopsis. Therefore, it will actually start to lean even if it's grown in a pot. This can also mean that it might touch the window. And if the window is hot or very cold, it can actually damage the leaves. If you grow your orchid on your desk, make sure that it's not touching anything that could heat up, maybe a computer unit, because the result will be the same. You might end up with patches of damage on the leaves. Another aspect to keep in mind when choosing a location is the risk of actually damaging them. Places where open doors or open windows can hit the orchids are not suitable. Also, places where a lot of people walk by every day, such as a hallway, need some extra attention. As I was saying, orchids will eventually start to lean towards the light, or they can have arched or tall flower spikes. They're not the most comfortable when it comes to this aspect. They can get easily snagged on your clothes, brushed against by people walking by, so make sure that the location you choose for your orchid is one that is relatively calm. If you grow the orchids next to a window, make sure that the window is closed or that you choose a window which opens upwards. You might not be able to fully protect your orchid from such events, but taking a few precautions is always useful. Remember, these orchids can actually get pretty large and even a little bit awkward to be around sometimes, even though extremely pretty. One aspect that I wanted to point out here is that not only the leaves and flower spikes can protrude from the pot, but also roots. Phalaenopsis orchids are epiphytic plants, meaning they don't grow in soil, and their roots can grow in the air. It is again within its nature to produce roots outside of the pot, and they can be slightly unruly at times. That is absolutely normal for a Phalaenopsis to do. I don't advise cutting of these roots because they are important for the orchid. Even though it might not look that way, they're actually absorbing humidity, and if anything ever happens to the roots inside the potting medium, you can absolutely hydrate an orchid through its aerial roots, so they serve as a plan B. I would not advise anyone to cut the aerial roots, but don't be alarmed if your Phalaenopsis will start to put out roots each and every direction. Just try to make sure that you protect these roots and you don't brush against them either. If you have pets or small children, try to make sure that you put these orchids in a place where they cannot reach it. By mistake, pets can actually bump into orchids, make them fall over, and this can result in loss of leaves, loss of roots, or loss of flowers. Placing orchids on a higher shelf can help you out. Also, placing the plastic orchid pot inside a heavier, maybe clay decorative container will help out. It will make the orchid more stable, but do be very, very careful. These pots are definitely heavier, and if you do have children, make extra sure that they will not reach the orchid. Maybe keep them in a room where they don't usually go, maybe in your bedroom, maybe at the office, or simply don't use decorative pots. The plastic pots together with the medium are pretty light, so they're not very dangerous, but the decorative pots definitely are. Related to decorative pots, one thing I wanted to point out is the color of the roots. As you can see right here, the roots inside the pot are white yellowish. This does not mean that the roots are unhealthy. It simply means that the orchid did not allocate chlorophyll pigments, which are the green pigments, to the roots. Because there is no light in the decorative container, light cannot reach the roots. Therefore, only the roots at the top of the medium have chlorophyll pigments, but the roots inside don't. It is perfectly safe for the orchid to have these types of roots. They're not unhealthy, they're certainly very much alive and absorbing water and nutrients. Now let's talk about how it is to actually live with a Phalaenopsis orchid. These are questions that I did receive along the years from my viewers, and I think it's a good opportunity to answer them. First of all, are air fresheners safe around orchids? Well, you will find articles which suggest that you don't use air fresheners. To be fully honest, I always use air fresheners because I love them, and I've never actually had issues. I don't believe you should directly spray your orchid with an air freshener. Definitely don't do that. But in my experience, scented candles or scented oils never actually harmed orchids, so I think you're perfectly safe to use them. Another question is, are orchids toxic to our pets? And to that I say always research what your pet is allergic to. But generally speaking, Phalaenopsis orchids are not toxic to us or to pets. There are many growers who have cats, and for whatever reason, cats are very drawn to orchids, and sometimes they nibble on the leaves and roots. And throughout the years, none of my viewers ever told me that anything bad happened to their pets. In my research, I've never found anything that could state orchids are harmful or toxic to pets, or to humans for that matter, so I don't think you should worry, but definitely check with your veterinarian or do your own research, and of course, try to avoid your pet munching on your orchid. It's really not good for the orchid either. Many viewers ask me if they can keep their Phalaenopsis orchid in their bedroom, in their house, if they are allergic to pollen. And well, again, you should actually check with your physician. However, generally, orchids are not known to give allergies because of their pollen. And this is because they don't actually have powder pollen that spreads in the air. Phalaenopsis orchids keep their pollen in sacs, and these sacs are very well hidden. If something brushes against the flower, the pollen can actually escape, but generally this doesn't happen because the orchid protects it. It's not all that easy to get to it, and as I was saying, it doesn't spread in the air, not even when the flower is about to fall. A little side note related to pollen, usually with Phalaenopsis orchids, when a flower loses its pollen, it simply withers off within a few days, because the orchid does not want to invest any more energy into a flower which either got pollinated or lost its pollen. So you can imagine that the pollen is guarded quite nicely by the plant. There is, however, something you should absolutely be careful with, and this is old broken down medium. Because we are not actually using soil, but bark chips, sphagnum moss, and other organic materials, over the course of a few years they will break down, and at this point they can actually attract molds. When this happens, it is time to repot the orchid, offer fresh medium. But regarding your health, I would encourage you that if ever, after watering your Phalaenopsis, you detect a moldy smell, or you just happen to see spots of fuzzy white formations, it might actually be time to change the medium of your Phalaenopsis, particularly if you have a new orchid. I would advise everybody to repot freshly bought orchids. And one of the reasons is to avoid molds. And definitely it's not healthy for you to have something molding in your house. So with that said, it is time to end. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Repot Me, for making this video series possible and for offering the products to feature in these videos. And you guys know the drill. Like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and other fun orchid subjects. And with that said, don't forget to check the description for additional information, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!